Thank you, Mayor Miller, for joining us for this November edition of Ask Mayor Miller. You know, in the lull of the holiday season, there's just a little break in county commission meetings, but you recently appointed the ad hoc committee to redraw district lines based on the 2020 census. So what are you seeing as the challenges in the current districts and opportunities for improvement?
Well, I'm not sure if there's any challenges right now, but what we're looking forward to doing is finding out from the state the population shifts that we've had in Macon-Bibb County to see if it affects any district lines. Could be that the lines will remain the same, but I do have some commissioners that have expressed some issues in their areas where they feel a little bit disconnected from their constituents, and they've asked us to look at those areas to see if they could we could draw the lines in a little better way. So we're going to do that. We wanted to be open and transparent, form a committee together, travel to Atlanta to get on the software that they have, to look at any deviations they may have had in our population, as well as all other types of things like race and, et cetera. So I think that the main thing we want to take out of this is we want an open, fair process, and we wanted to be included the commissioners. So we made sure we had a variety of commissioners, both young and old, black and white, male and female, Republicans and Democrats. And I think we've got a good group going there, and we'll bring back the district map suggestions for our committee as a whole. So we're looking forward to doing that. Our plans is to go in the next week, be back by December the 7th with a proposal for a commission to decide as a whole. And
then, of course, it goes to the legislature, and it all has to be ready by March?
Right. Well, they actually want it ready by January the 31st. When they're back in session, they're going to vote on those as local acts to approve those. The danger is, and some commissioners realize that if we choose to do nothing, then the district may be created by the local delegation or the state without any input. So we want to make sure we have the input, let them know what our concerns are. But I'm interested in getting all the information myself to look and see where our population is in Macon to see if there's any changes that are needed.
Now, plans are progressing for the Urban Development Authority to issue the $40 million in bonds for the Macon Mall improvements, and the Industrial Authority is also considering $500 million in bonds for the Brightmark Plastics Recycling Plant. So what do you see as the benefits of using bonds for public and private projects, and what are the liabilities?
Well, I guess every project carries different liabilities. The $40 million liability is very minimal at best. It's a good way to go on the public market to market bonds, revenue bonds, to raise money. Right now we're in a perfect situation because our interest rates are so low. These bonds, you're looking at about a 3% interest rate, which is really good if you do the taxable. The non-taxable, you can get a little bit less expensive than that. But this allows us to get a large lump sum of money and have this particular bonds get paid back with rent rolls that we already have coming in place. So it's really it's a very unique way to do things, and I think it's something very beneficial to Macon. This is private investment because a lot of these bonds will be paid back from rent rolls, from the venue itself at the mall. And of course the county has some departments we're going to be putting at the Macon Mall ourselves. Those functions will never go away, so they're always going to be there. We're always going to be paying rent somewhere. And what better place to pay rent to yourself? And instead of paying a third party for rent, we can actually pay ourselves for that. So Board of Elections is never going away. We're always going to have a Board of Elections, so you can rely on that income and that budget every year. Planning and zoning is not going away. You can rely on that income. Those types of things are always going to be something that's consistent in our community that's needed. So we know there's always going to be a constant revenue stream there for rent, which makes the obligations to meet very, very simple on a bond. The other things like your Brightmark and other potential ventures there, if that still happens and we're still able to move that project forward, all these pretty much are self-sufficient. They pay for themselves. And there's very little risk at all to the community.
Now, blight has been an issue we've been talking about for 11 months now. What are the next steps for blighted properties? A Sub-South man is tired of seeing that empty service station next to the Wendy's on Hartley Bridge Road, and another gentleman on Facebook is concerned about a lot next to Linwood Cemetery in Pleasant Hill that he feels will become overgrown. So what are your next steps in the mission to clean things up?
Well, and regarding the one on Hartley Bridge Road, he'd be Nice for him to know that that will be coming down in the next month. They've already hired a third party after they received my blight letter to remove that property, that structure there. We do anticipate a new business is going there in the very near future, but they were not quite on the same timeline as I was to get rid of it. So we sent a blight letter to the owner. He's been in contact with my office every week to make sure that he can get that down in a reasonable time. I've spoken with the person who's going to be taking it, the company that's going to take that gas station down, and they've let me know that it's going to happen before the end of the year. So we're moving on those issues as well. A couple of things is we've taken out, removed about 75 blighted structures this year ourselves. We don't own those properties. Most of those properties have contained asbestos or lead paint, had residential fires there, and they're a danger to the community. So I'd much rather have that house removed and had a lot there that's not being used, even if it's overgrown, as opposed to have something that a child could go in and get hurt, or perhaps another fire get started to wipe out a neighborhood, or the criminal activity that we've seen time and time again where criminals hide in those places, do drugs, prostitution, and other things. We do have a long-term plan. Once we remove these houses, we're going to look back at the layout of the land to see if we can group some of these together, and our hopes is to use some of the next ARP money for revolving loan funds to allow people to borrow money at a low interest rate to build new homes in these areas. So we don't want a lot of vacant property out there, but right now we don't own these homes. We're just placing liens on them when we take them down because they're so dangerous. At some point in time, we may own those properties or put them up for sale or execute on our liens. But we want to do those in a very strategic way to benefit our community the best way we can. And I think to do so would allow them, the prices to come down on building a little bit in the next year, and to have some low interest money that we get that we can loan out there for people to reinvest into neighborhoods.
During the holiday season, many families are going to take a trip to the graveside, and many cemeteries fall into disrepair these days. The Rickard administration, the prior administration, was in talks with Riverside Cemetery to accept that into county maintenance. But what is the status of that negotiation? Is that still a deal that's being talked about? And do you have plans for taking on any other of the neglected cemeteries in town?
Well, Riverside Cemetery is already going to be ours. That's pretty much a done deal. We're working on ways that we can take care and maintain all the cemeteries that we either have or have inherited. You have to really make a tough choice sometimes where you're going to get this now when it's not in such a bad state or disrepair, knowing that the future is probably going to be cremation. You're not going to have a lot of, the business is a dying business, no pun intended, but it's a dying business, and basically a lot of people are being cremated. You're having less property this time. People are spending less money on lots, and it makes it very difficult for a person to stay in business operating this type of location. So the county is de facto having taken over these. We didn't ask for a lot of these cemeteries, but we're stuck with doing that. And you have to try to figure out the best way to use taxpayers' money. We had complaints last year on several cemeteries not being kept properly. And I can agree that that was probably the case. A lot of it was pandemic related because there's not enough help there. Some of the folks that were cutting our grass, like the jail inmates, were not allowed for 18 months. And then some of the landscaping companies we had did not renew their contracts, so they cannot fulfill their obligations. They terminated their contracts with Macon-Bibb County on a lot of our parks as well as cemeteries, and said we can't get the staff, we can't get the equipment, we can't get our equipment maintained, therefore we can't do this job, which left us in a situation of not being able to handle that job. We've since hired a third-party company that will cut the grass on a regular basis. They won't keep it manicured like the masters, but certainly they'll start from one end and go to the other to maintain these. It's a loss leader, but it's something I think we're obligated to do for our community, and we're going to do our very best to do that. Of course, if it's your loved one there and the grass is overgrown on a day that you choose to go visit there, it's very emotional for you. But I just, ask for patience. It's something we're working on. It's on our radar. But you have to decide at some point in time if you're going to cut that grass 4 times there at the cemetery, or you're going to cut it at least once or twice on the main roadways that lead to economic development that come in our community and are seen every day. Because quite honestly, we didn't ask to go into the cemetery business. We inherited these These are things that are not typically budgeted for, although we did put additional money in our budget this year. So it's a work in progress, but I do see some light at the end of the tunnel.
And you said at the beginning that we do have Riverside now as our property. That has gone through, or?
It's about 95%. We've reached an agreement on that. There's a few details to work out on there on some property that are surrounding that area. It has to go through the state because there's a trust fund set up for that where money would have to be transferred to the county. And that's the only discussion that we've had is how to navigate the final arrangements to get the money from the trust, because we're going to use a lot of that money that they have in their account now to help maintain that over several times. And we're going to try to pool the resources there at Rose Hill and at Riverside, since they're closely connected. And there's also still some lots that can be sold out there, so you have to come up with a mechanism of who's going to be responsible for selling those lots, opening, closing, and things like that. But we're pretty much, 95% sure that we're going to be having Riverside Cemetery and all those parcels that come with that property, and everything will be worked out in the very near future.
Okay. One of the recurring issues facing the community, too, is the proliferation of the discarded used tires. Can you explain what your administration is doing? I know you've just unveiled a new plan. That's something that it seems to keep happening, and we put cameras up in different places. So what's the status right now, and what's the plan going forward?
Well, it has continued to happen, but actually it's less than before, so we do have a little bit of encouragement there. But really just unrolled this, rolled out the ordinance this year, and we began to start advising the public in, I think, around June of this year to let these tire companies know we're serious about this. You're going to face fines. We've done some trial and error kind of practice there with cameras to catch folks, and we're prosecuting those now, and there'll be some things coming on that. But the main thing is the manifestos that these tire companies have to fill out and complete in code enforcement to check on these things. For instance, you may get rid of a few tires at your house and throw them on the side of the road, or go to a place that you've seen other tires out and consider that's a dumping ground. But the majority we get are from businesses that don't properly dispose of their tires in a legal and ethical manner. They hire a shade tree person to pick their tires up and supposedly take them to a reliable end game, and they dump them on the side of a road in our communities, because a lot of times they think they can do that and they disrespect them. Those are several hundred tires that we find. And once you have, that many, people just continue to dump. They say, well, somebody will pick them up, so they go by and throw theirs there, and they continue to do that, so it gets out of hand. One of the things we're doing on December 11th is having a tire amnesty day, where everybody can bring their tires free of charge to a central location downtown at 900 11th Street, and they can drop those off at no charge. There's no limit that they can drop off as long as they're a Bibb County resident. And if they're unable to provide transportation to get down there, we'll actually dispose of 4 tires for free, and they can go on to C-Clip Fix, and we'll pick those tires up at their home, so they don't just discard them or leave them out by their trash can that won't get picked up. So we're taking all the steps, I think, necessary to get rid of this problem. There's going to be more arrests, I anticipate, but our code enforcement is conducting various things, and they'll be checking your manifestos at every tire distributor in Macon that's under our ordinance, and making sure that we track those tires from the time they get into that location to the time they leave, to make sure they're going to the proper place. So I think after you get fined $25 a tire, that's going to be very expensive, and I think they're going to do things the right way. And we may have to make an example of a few people right off the bat and let people know we're serious about this.
Anything else you'd like to add this month?
Wow. We're very excited about the OLAS. I think since the last time we were here, the OLAS had not passed. I think the community gave an ultimatum, and encouraged by the 81% passage rate of that, the nearly 81%. And some people, seem to suggest that there was a low turnout, but it's not. If you look at all the previous loss that we've had, e-spots that we had, this is probably the highest turnout that we've had in that issue. Not only that, more comforting is we won a yes vote in every single precinct in Macon, which tells me that we have buy-in all across the community, and not just a few communities that own a lot of property in Macon. So we're very encouraged about that. And we have some other things dealing with crime that we're going to be rolling out in the next few weeks. In particular, our strategic plan that we have for the MVP program. 2021 has been another one of those years that we'll look back at. But crime has not substantially increased in Macon, despite what people may believe. We're about where we were last year, which is not good in 2020. but other areas continue to increase their crime and their homicides at an alarming rate. I think about my good friend Skip Henderson over in Columbus, where they have over 60-something murders there this year, and last year they had substantially less than that. So they're continue to grow in those areas, and I think they're going to be playing catch up. Whereas Bibb County has remained about the same, but we know now, based on the types of crimes we had this year, how better to address those. The strategic plan, when we put that in place, and the funding that we're finally doing through the Community Foundation, we're confident in the next 12 to 24 months that we're going to see that rate start to decrease and continue on the downhill slide, because we're attacking those root causes. So we know people are concerned about that in the community, but we feel like that we put together the team and the plan necessary to tackle this, and I think we're going to see some dramatic decreases in the next 12 to 24 months, and we're very excited about those possibilities.
Since you brought up the OLOST, what is the timeline for that going forward? When do we see a property tax rollback? When do we see the other facets of that?
We've done everything we were supposed to do with the state. The election was certified. We're been in communications with the Department of Revenue to send out all the letters about collection. That'll start around the first week in January. The plan has always been to follow the law. The law says you collect 1 year and you roll back the next year. So we appreciate the local delegation doing their part to get it on the ballot. We did our part on making sure people were educated and they passed it. We'll look at our finances like we do every year at budget time, and if there's a chance to give a rollback every year, we'll do that. But the law is going to require 100% rollback after the first year of collections going into the second year. So I think people will start to see at least after the full year of collection, they'll receive a 35% reduction. Could be as much as 40% reduction in their property taxes in 2023 and 2024. But we can't do ourselves harm by trying to rush something and make mistakes just to please folks to give something back before we collect it. I think we're just asking for trouble. We're not sure where we're at in the pandemic and what that's going to mean going forward as far as recovery. Inflation is pretty high right now. So you have to be very mindful of those things and do what we promised to do, and that is after the first year of collections, then we'll start the rollbacks, and then in full implementation will be a 7 to 8 mil rollback permanently unless people decide to do that after the sunset. So we're very excited about that. Other communities are raising their taxes, and Bibb County is decreasing our taxes. I think we're going to see a large economic impact on that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for joining us.
Thank you.